Okay, I think I'm live. I'm not going to try with a intro video this time because I've just put everything onto one video so that hopefully I don't lose everything. Now, I haven't actually tested my mic, but it looks like I'm working, so just give me a 1 if you can hear me. As you may understand, I'm still a little bit paranoid when it comes to live streaming because I worry about messing up. Okay, cool. We got a 1. So welcome in, everyone. As you know, I don't do the long, drawn-out welcomes. I like to just jump straight into my videos. Now, I do want to just share my love for everyone in Canada. We went through the Bondi shooting only recently. I know what it feels like. I'm not going to go further into that. I did a post, but I just wanted to mention that at the start of this video. So this is a bit of a continuation in terms of Gus's case, but it is also looking at the similarities. There is so much that was discussed in the press conference from Gus's case that basically applies to Jack and Lily's case. And it explains so much of what Rob McCammon was talking about when he was talking about technologies and stuff. So I wanted to go through the live stream, whatever. Sorry. I wanted to go through the good one, Mouse. Mouse also wants to say hello, apparently. Anyway, trying to get back on track. I wanted to go through the press conference because of all the explanations in terms of the search technology, because there's some really good things in there that will help us understand how it seems almost impossible that Lily and Jack could have been missed had they wandered off into the woods. So I'm actually going to start by playing one of the clips from Rob McCammon. I find it does my head in because you also have the search guy who was, I can't think of his name right now, but his name was very similar to McCammon, and I keep getting it messed up. But anyway, I'm going to play that clip first, and then we will launch into the actual presser for Gus. And thankfully, having loaded up my single video, I haven't lost the media this time. There are images that I will hopefully be able to share at some point, but I didn't load them beforehand because I figured I'd just lose them. But I've got a lot of stuff here just in one video this time. I'm learning. Okay, let's have a look at this video from Rob McCammon, or of Rob McCammon.
At this point, do you think those children are still in the woods?
We've done an extensive ground search using all technology that could be available to us, including drones and penetrating radar for the ground. We've had human remains detection dogs out there, and our ground search and rescue volunteers covered extensively the area around where the children were missing. So I think the chances are low. However, there's always that possibility that they may be in an area that just we haven't been able to find them. It does happen. It's happened. So I would say the chances are there is a slight potential they're still in the woods, but we're following up on every lead we can to try and ascertain that.
So if they're not in the woods, where could they be?
Well, again, that's that is the main goal of what we're trying to accomplish, to find out what happened with Jack and Lily.
The court documents suggest that RCMP are using technology-based techniques. What does that mean? Basically,
we're looking at whatever technology is out there to assist us with our work, whether that be during the search phase with the drones and the side scanning lidar and radar, or whether that's through the use of different analysis products or other tech options, whether it be the use of video review programs that do things more efficiently, which we have done. You know, there's just looking at different ways to do our jobs more efficiently and to gather the most evidence possible.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming in.
Oops, sorry about that. There should have been a lead-in screen that told me to pause, but there wasn't. So I clearly made a mistake. And I was also holding off because Mouse was having a bit of a barking fit. I think he heard Rob McCammon's voice and he thought there was a man somewhere that he had to bark at. So you've all seen that before, or probably most of you have seen that before, with Rob McCammon talking about why the children aren't in the woods. He does the thing of humouring the public, I guess, by saying there's always that possibility. But we know that that's not the direction that their investigation is going on. And given how far along the investigation is, we know that that possibility is pretty much 0.0001. He spoke about a number of different technologies, the drones, and I've spoken about all this before, but I'll just give a quick recap. So the drones have got the FLIR technology, which is the forward-looking infrared technology, and that allows them to look for body heat and stuff like that. So that was one of the technologies that he's talking about that they used, and they use them at night time because that's a better time for sensing body heat because it's cooler. There's less things to interfere with that. He also spoke about the ground penetrating radar, which until that interview, we didn't know that they had used ground penetrating radar. And I would love to know where they used that, because I suspect they may have used it around the property, which of course suggests that, well, we know what that suggests. They definitely believed that something happened on that property. And he also spoke about your LiDAR radar, which is, I've done a few videos talking about this now. That is the laser one, where you have the lasers that basically from an aerial vehicle, a drone or a helicopter or a light plane, and they send a laser down to the ground and they measure the time that it takes for that to hit the ground and come back. And that's another mapping tool that is used that basically just shows the ground, like the way the ground lies. It just strips away everything like trees and houses and stuff. And that's how you can see where there's mine shafts, where there's gullies, things like that. So in one of my videos the other day, I showed you a slide, which I would have loved to have put up, but I haven't got that slide ready because I can't load the slides beforehand, apparently. But I showed a slide the other day where we could actually see there's a massive gully up behind that house in Lansdowne Road. Not Lansdowne, Gerlock Road. So that's the sort of things they can see with LiDAR. And then he spoke about the analysis products and the video programs, the video scanning programs. I won't go into them too much right now because they are what is discussed at length in this press conference. So this guy does a really good explanation of a lot of these technologies. I know a lot of people have probably watched this press conference already, but I certainly felt that it was a really worthwhile thing to go through, and definitely worthwhile in terms of the search for Lily and Jack, because I think once you've seen this, you will understand why so many of us are convinced that there's no way that they missed those children. Well, I mean, we know now anyway, because everything we've heard points towards it being a criminal investigation. You know, we're reaching the point where they're starting to leak things out in terms of giving the notion to listeners that, hey, yeah, this is going to be criminal. Sorry, I'm paying attention to the dogs as well because something's caught their attention. So if I suddenly mute, it'll be because you've probably got 3 dogs barking all at once. Anyway, I'm going to start on this press conference. I'll be pausing through this to comment on things, obviously. But it starts with, of course, a discussion, a bit more of the case, and then he goes into the search in more details. Because this is talking about Gus as well, I want to cover the entire press conference. So I will be including these case details, not just talking about the search straight out.
Here today to provide you an update in relation to the ongoing missing person investigation relating to Gus Lamont. The search for 4-year-old Gus, who disappeared from Oak Park Station on the 27th of September last year, has been the largest and most intensive missing person search ever undertaken by SAPOL. Every police officer and civilian involved in the search for Gus has had the sole focus of locating Gus and returning him to his parents.
I'm just going to pause there because I want to mention something that hit me like a sledgehammer last night when I was watching another media clip about this case. And most people are going to go, well, duh, any fool would have put those two together. But I'm just going to point out, I don't follow AFL. So for those of you who aren't in Australia, AFL is our football. It's like, you know, the big thing that you're kind of expected to follow AFL. You're expected to have a footy team. Pretty much every workplace is going to have, you know, AFL colour days where you go in your AFL clothes, and everyone ribs everyone else when it's grand final time, depending on whose team they are. It's a big thing in Australia. I think it's probably like the Super Bowl in America. I'm not sure, but it is big. And what I realised last night is that the time frame they're talking about in terms of when Gus went missing was when the AFL Grand Final was on. Why that is significant is, as cliche as this sounds, Australians love their beers. A lot of Australians do, I don't. But it is just a cultural thing when the AFL Grand Final is on that people get together and they crack open a couple of beers, or they crack open an entire case of beer. And the downside of that is that DV instances spike on grand final weekend. So we're hearing that this is connected to someone who was on the property, and now putting things together, it was during the grand final. So I can't help wondering if there was alcohol consumption involved in what happened with Gus. I may be wrong, but it is, I mean, here in Victoria, and this drives me cranky, we have a long weekend for the AFL, meaning that people start drinking on Friday night and they spend half the weekend completely drunk. And this is why we have this increase in domestic violence, this massive spike in domestic violence on AFL weekend. So I think it is significant, and having just twigged that that is the case, I thought I should probably mention it, because it may be something that comes out in the future that, yeah, there is some sort of connection with alcohol consumption, AFL, and what happened to Gus.
Sadly, to date, our efforts to locate Gus have not been successful. On the 14th of October last year, the Commissioner approved the establishment of Task Force Horizon to continue the investigation in relation to locating Gus. Since Gus's disappearance, there's been a groundswell of support from a range of government agencies, private companies and community groups, all with the same focus as us, and that is to locate Gus. The scale of the air and ground search as part of this investigation is unprecedented, and today I'm going to provide you much more detail around what we have done in relation to that as part of the Task Force Horizon investigation. The search for Gus was based on him walking off from Oak Park Station and becoming lost. This is one of 3 investigation options that have been explored by the members attached to Task Force Horizon. The other 2 investigation options are focused on Gus being abducted from Oak Park Station, or whether someone known to him was involved in his disappearance and suspected death.
Obviously, we're talking about the same scenario as Lily and Jack. And similarly, when it comes to Gus, it is an area that is highly unlikely in terms of abduction. More so with Gus, obviously, because you would have to actually drive into the property and everyone would see the dust storm from a vehicle going along that road and things like that. So, you know, it would be even less likely. But even still, Gairloch Road, that house is isolated. Nobody would have known those children were home. So a lot of what they're looking at in terms of isolation definitely still applies for Lily and Jack.
I'll provide you further details on all of those concurrent investigations this afternoon. As well as that, today I'm also declaring the disappearance of Gus Lamont to be a major crime. So I'll start with...
I should probably point out there's a difference here in that in Australia we don't have something like the Missing Persons Act. So it's one of those things where it's not going to affect how they investigate the case. It's not going to affect their access in terms of warrants and stuff to publicly name it up as a criminal investigation, because it's not like in Canada where you have this Missing Persons Act, which gives them so much more power in terms of what they can collect with information, you know, accessing bank records without having to put together a really strong warrant application, etc. So if you're wondering, well, how come they've jumped in straight up and named it up as criminal and 9 months in we're still waiting with Lily and Jack, it's because we don't have that softer option in terms of accessing things through a Missing Persons Act. So the warrants that they would have to do are the same regardless of whether they describe it as a missing persons case or a criminal investigation.
The foot search, as I've indicated, the foot search has been unprecedented and the resources that have been used have been significant. And just to give you a snapshot of what that is, 163 SAPOL members, including recruits, have been used in the search operation. 230 non-SAPOL resources have been used. That includes the SES, the Australian Defence Force, the Army, who deployed twice in and around the Oak Park Station area. Indigenous trackers and community groups have all been involved. We've had deployments to Oak Park Station for over 20 days as part of that search operation, and there's been 8 separate searches, at least 8 separate searches conducted at Oak Park Station.
So just to name up some of those things, because if you're not in Australia, you're probably thinking, what do all these letters mean? So SAPOL, if you're following the case, you might have figured out by now that's South Australia Police. We're really good at abbreviating everything here in Australia. So SAPOL, South Australia Police. SES, that is, okay, I've got a mental blank, but it's the search and rescue. A lot of SES people are volunteers. So people who do training in their own time, and they train to a really, really high level. And then they go out and they do these sort of things with searches. They also attend motor vehicle accidents in regional areas. So sometimes they see some things that for civilians are not fun. But there is a lot of commitment from SES, a lot of people who really dedicate a lot of time to SES. So they're highly valued here in Australia, and they are very good at what they do. And then you had the Australian Defence Force, which I think that speaks for itself.
Due to the remoteness of Oak Park Station and the challenges that that environment provides, the searching would not have been possible without the assistance of these resources. And I'd just like to very quickly thank the Australian Defence Force, and particularly the Army and the State Emergency Service, for their participation in those searches. Detailed ground search to a radius of 5.47 kilometres out from Oak Park Station was conducted over several days. So I'd just like to show you what that is. So you'll see on the slide here, Oak Park Station in the middle, and the blue line that goes around that is the distance of 5.47 kilometres. That equates to about 94 square kilometres. To give you some context, this is what it looks like if you overlaid that into the CBD. You can see that.
So they would have calculated that in the same way that they did with Lily and Jack. I believe that in Australia we also use the same resource, and I can't even think what it's called now. I should have written it down in my notes. But we use the same search and rescue resource that Canada uses, that comes out of the United States. So from that research, from that guy who's done like 40 years worth of research, and I've done a video on that, and hopefully someone will remind me afterwards to link that video in the description for this after we finish the live. Hint, hint, farm girl, or anyone else, you know what I'm talking about. I have done a video talking about that particular search and rescue thing. So they've used a formula to figure out the distance that they need to cover in terms of how far out they need to search for a 4-year-old little boy. But he does he does go into that a little bit more.
5 square kilometres takes up the majority of the inner suburban metropolitan area of Adelaide. It's a significant distance that has all been searched on foot, as I said. We'll just go back to the slide that now shows you what that looks like on Oak Park Station. So you'll see in the shaded area is Oak Park Station itself. That's the boundary of the station. The 5.47 kilometres takes in a significant portion of the station, but you'll also see that it also just cuts out of the station into some of the neighbouring properties. Again, all of that area there, 94 square kilometres, has all been searched on foot. That search has been overseen by police forward commanders, experienced police forward commanders, and very experienced field search controllers. We have a large degree of confidence that that area has been searched thoroughly. You might ask why 5.47 kilometres? The National Search and Rescue Manual indicates to us scientifically, soundly based statistical data that children aged 4 to 6 years of age are located 95% of the time within 5 5.47 kilometres of their last known place they were seen. So it's not guesswork, it's based on scientific, factual, reliable statistical data is why we put the foot search into that area and why.
And I should point out here that I think it was on Shan's channel where they mentioned that now in terms of cases that they're basing their information on, the data comes from, the data comes from something like 10,000 cases around the world. So the data that they're talking about, that this guy who wrote the manual in America, and if someone can prompt me with what it's called, because my brain is just not quite working this morning. Where am I at? Yeah, so it's based on significant data. So, and this applies to Lily and Jack too. So there is, for starters, the data saying that, you know, you need to search within this area. 4 to 6-year-olds, this is the distance that is usually where they're going to be found. But there's also calculations that go into that in terms of age and how long since the children have been missing. So when they put the report in, and the Lily and Jack, they got the call at 10 o'clock, but we know that they knew that Lily and Jack had been apparently missing since 8 o'clock. So they would have factored in the time from 8 o'clock through to when the search began in terms of figuring out what distance they needed to focus on initially and then expanding out the search. But the thing they do also is that's a ground search. The helicopters and drones and stuff, they are still going to go out further because they've got more capacity to do so.
Invested so much time and effort into that area in the early part of this investigation. As you'd appreciate, and you already know, this area contained 3 dams. Those dams have been searched twice. On one of those occasions, we actually drained the dams so that the police divers could satisfy themselves as close to 100% as they could that Gus is not in any of those dams, and we are confident that he's not. While I don't have a picture of it, there is a watercourse that also runs through Oak Park Station, and that has also been thoroughly searched.
In my live stream the other day, I showed the watercourse. What he's referring to is not actually like something that's running, but it's a dry bed at the moment. So there's a lot of erosion and stuff, a lot of spots where if a child had wandered off, they could tuck in under a ledge and stuff like that. Thank you, Farm Girl. So it's Lost Person Behaviour by Robert Kirster. That is what Canada, what Australia, what America, what all these search and rescue organisations base their manuals on. That is what they base their search training on. And it is really, really extensive.
In total, as I said, 8 searches have been conducted at Oak Park Station around the homestead and outbuildings, interior and exterior of all of those buildings. You'll see in the top right is an overhead picture of Oak Park Station homestead and some of those outbuildings. The larger picture is a picture of the shearing shed, and then the bottom right are some other outbuildings attached to Oak Park Station, not necessarily nearby to the homestead. Some of them are a few kilometres away, but all of those outbuildings have been searched multiple times, and some of those outbuildings have also been subjected to forensic testing. No stone has been left unturned in terms of searching those outbuildings and the homestead. Coupled with that, the owners of Oak Park Station and the neighbouring properties have also been conducting their own searching. We know that their properties have been mustered with the stock that's on those properties at least once since the 27th of September, which effectively means they've covered a significant amount of ground in Oak Park Station, mustering stock during that time.
Now, maybe Bonsa Sheila might have a bit more background knowledge here in terms of the owners of the property, because I find it interesting that he's saying the owners of the property have done a lot of extensive searching as well. I thought that I would have thought the grandparents were the owners, but I may be wrong, because I wouldn't put a lot of stock in it if they're the people, if one of them is the person you're looking at as being responsible. In terms of mustering, we're talking about a very large amount of stock on that property. So if they have mustered them and moved them to another area on the property, then yes, they would have covered quite a large area in doing so.
We've got no information that would suggest that Gus has been located during those searches either. You'll also know that we've searched some mine shafts that are located within 10 kilometres of Oak Park Station. Those two photographs there are indicative of what those mine shafts look like. They were taken by Task Force Horizon members who were on the ground the day that those mine shafts were searched. We are confident, very confident, that Gus is not in these mine shafts.
There's other images somewhere of those mine shafts, and you can see that they did the same there as they did with Jack and Lily's case, in that they put a drone down those mine shafts and checked them. So that is why he's saying that they are confident. I think when it comes to Jack and Lily's case, Amy Hansen said that they had put drones down a number of they checked some mine shafts. There was one they couldn't go down and they put a drone down there. So I think with Jack and Lily, they have checked a lot of mine shafts in the area. There's a few that I'm particularly interested in that I would love to know if they've checked them, but I've actually sent that on to RCMP anyway, and I'm not going to mention it here because obviously that's something that's probably not mentioned, that shouldn't be mentioned publicly.
6 of them were done, and it gives you an indication of what they look like. That's ground searching, significant. I'll just go to aerial searching now. So we've conducted aerial searching of vast areas surrounding Oak Park Station. Initially, Polair attended and searched from Oak Park Station out to a distance of around about 12 kilometres on the night that Gus disappeared, using their forward-looking infrared technology attached to the helicopter, but there was no sign of Gus using that capability. We then employed the services of a specialised drone company who did some specific searching out to 2.5 kilometres from the homestead, 2 kilometres around the dams that I spoke about, and also down some roadways leading in and out of Oak Park Station, about 8 kilometres down one roadway and 6 kilometres down another. The imagery, and I'll speak about the imagery shortly. We also engaged the services of an aircraft that had highly specialised camera equipment in the aircraft. That aircraft flew on 2 occasions for us. Firstly, out to a distance of 10 kilometres, which included the 5. So you'll see the red line gets out to 10. And also...
Oh, okay, sorry. There is a slide there. So I've got 2 images here, which you've got the RCMP helicopters here, and they are fitted with the same equipment that the Australian helicopters have. And what you can see is that black thing underneath is the technology he's talking about. And what he was referring to was augmented reality. And I've spoken about this some time ago also. You will see it shortly, but it is basically they get the footage, the camera footage, but in real time it uses AI to enhance the camera footage even more so that you can tell what every single little thing on that footage is. And that is extremely useful for searching, because there's no way when you see this augmented reality, there's no way that when you have this sort of equipment covering an area that they're going to miss anything.
It flew out to 15 kilometres, and that's the green line. Again, I'll give you an indication of what that might look like in terms of area as you overlay it onto the metropolitan area of Adelaide. That's the area that has been searched by a highly specialised aircraft. It's not an insignificant area. In fact, out to the green line is 706 square kilometres has been searched. Just go back to the Oak Park station there. You'll see 94 square kilometres was the initial search, out to 10. We then went out to 15. As I said earlier, 95% of 4 to 6 year olds statistically are located within that blue circle. We are reducing that percentage even further by going out significantly further than the 5 kilometres, such as the effort that we've made to locate Gus. What we did with the imagery that was captured by the aircraft and the drone, we gave to an external AI company who was able to provide us really high definition pictures and footage, and all of this imagery has been reviewed by members who are attached to Task Force Horizon. So I'd just like to give you just a bit of an indication of what that looks like. So when we get our report back from the company, you'll see on the right is essentially a circle. That is the circle out to 15 kilometres, and you'll see different colours within that, and what those colours are relates to what's on the left of the screen in terms of livestock and animals. So from the AI, we know that at that particular time, Oak Park.
This is utterly amazing. This is what I was saying in terms of the augmented reality and everything. So they are actually able in the entire area to say, well, there's nearly 10,000 sheep, there's over 6,000 goats, and then they've got every single thing listed there. And you can see down towards the bottom, there's detections of interest. So that would highlight areas that someone needs to go and search on foot. So he's saying this went to an AI company after the fact. They would have put all the camera footage from the helicopters and drones into a program. So this program would have... sorry, Real Northeaster, is there a new recording from Wade? Let me know. Sorry, I'll get back onto this. I just saw that and my brain went, whoa, stop. I have to confess, big mistake this morning. I forgot to take my ADHD meds, which is why my brain is all scattered. I took them when I realised, but they'll probably kick in towards the end of this live. So you have to just put up with me being a little bit scattered this morning. But what I was saying, they put in all this data of the footage from the helicopters, the footage from the drones into a software program, and that program does all this. And this is what Rob McCammon was talking about in terms of having analysis products that their videos went through. This is exactly the same sort of thing. So if they can do this with Gus, they would have been doing something very, very similar in terms of Lily and Jack. Clearly they've done it, as in putting the footage through this software. So they probably have a very similar map.
Had almost 10,000 sheep, which are blue, on their station, 6,300 plus goats, kangaroos. It even distinguishes between red and grey ones, such is the ability of the AI, and so it goes on. So all of those animals are depicted there within that circle. You'll see down the bottom that it's detected one human, and I'll show you what that is in a minute. But what it also does is it identifies to us areas of interest that should be searched that is not obvious to the AI, where they can't distinguish whether it's an animal or they can tell us what it is.
Sorry, I didn't unmute myself. Yeah, this is, sorry for people who've come in late, this is a mixed thing. This is Lily and Jack and Gus, because what he's talking about in this press conference gives us so much more insight into the search for Lily and Jack, and I thought it was so important. These images that you can see here, this is augmented reality. So basically, the images would not have been this clear, even with top-notch, like, camera equipment. They wouldn't have been quite as clear. So it's gone through this augmented reality software and has basically recreated the image so that it shows the details much more clearly. You can tell with the image of the guy on the bike, you can see that's kind of a little bit AI. So you can tell there that that's actually the augmented reality side of things. But when you think about this and you apply it in Lily and Jack's case, I know that there is a lot of tree coverage in the area where Lily and Jack went missing. But even still, through those gaps in the trees, using augmented reality software, then there's so much that they would be able to see. And they used the LiDAR technology in the first 24 hours, the heat sensing stuff in the area, and that didn't bring anything up either. So when you consider all these different technologies, and this is kind of why I've been so very adamant in my belief that there's no way Lily and Jack are still out there in the woods if they wandered off. Yeah, no, in terms of wild boars, they are a huge problem in Australia. With the Phoebe Bishop case, and this may be a little bit triggering, the forensics spent well over 24 hours collecting her remains from the area. This is up in Queensland because of wild boars. But if you looked at what they showed there on that map, it appears that they don't have wild boar on that property. I would imagine they've probably got, being outback South Australia, I wouldn't be surprised if they've got heavy fencing to keep out, like, emus, to keep out wild boars and stuff like that around the perimeter. Because, I mean, emus are so destructive as well. And I would imagine that area probably has quite a large population of feral emus as well. So clearly it doesn't appear that they have any wild boars on that property. But I'm going to speculate that we're probably looking for a burial site, quite possibly.
We have attended Oak Park Station on a number of occasions checking out those individual sites. So here's a slide that shows you what that imagery looks like. Really high quality. The human is on the right there that's riding the motorbike. Clearly that's not Gus, but that will show you that the AI will pick up what a human is compared to a sheep or a goat or a kangaroo. So we'll just go to the next slide. And that's how we can zoom in on the imagery and how clear that is and what we can actually see on the ground, particularly out past that 10 and 15 kilometre mark. There's a couple of sheep there.
That really is mind-blowing when you think about it. This is from a helicopter, and yet that image of those sheep is so clear. You can tell there is 2 sheep there. Whereas if it was just the camera that was in the helicopter, you'd probably just see that white blob and be like, I think that's sheep. But the augmented reality has just made it so much crisper, so much clearer, so that it's like you are standing on top of them.
So this is a capability that hasn't previously been used by SAPOL, and really getting this imagery captured and analysed for us would not have been possible without the assistance of some of these companies. I just want to take a very short moment to thank them, and they are Nearmaps Proprietary Limited, Working Drones Australia, Fujitsu, SciI Proprietary Limited, and the Australian Federal Police also assisted. And I want to thank them for the support that they've given to Task Force Horizon, and the support that they continue to give is much appreciated. So what's the result of all of this? The ground searches and the aerial searches with the images that you've seen have failed to locate Gus or any items belonging to Gus. At this time, despite all of the combined search efforts, we have found no evidence, physical or otherwise, to suggest that Gus has merely wandered off from the Oak Park homestead. However, if we do get new information that does come to hand, I'm not going to discount that further searching will be done, but you can see from the level of searching that has been undertaken, we have a high level of confidence that he has.
Does that sound familiar? He's almost using a very similar script to Rob McCammon. So when we hear them talking about how the area has been extensively searched, when we hear Rob McCammon saying that the area has been extensively searched, this is what he's talking about. And we get the same instance here where he's saying, well, there's absolutely no sign, no evidence that would suggest that Gus is still out there. Now, I'm not sure if it comes up later in this press conference or it was said elsewhere, but the point was made that a 4-year-old would eventually discard items. He would probably remove his hat or stuff when he became tired or confused or anything like that. And that's one of the big things with Lily and Jack. There is no sign of the backpack. There is no sign of anything that they may have had with them or may have been wearing when they disappeared. So what he's saying here very much applies.
Off. As I said earlier, the investigation has also focused on whether Gus was abducted from the property, and that has been a significant part of the Task Force Horizon members' day-to-day work in terms of establishing whether that has or has not happened. What we've done in relation to abduction, we have spoken to all people in the broader area around the mid-north and out even further who presents a risk profile associated with abduction or child offending. Those people have been discounted. We've identified and spoken to neighbours and people who were or had been working on Oak Park Station or neighbouring properties at around the time of Gus's disappearance. We've identified people and vehicles in the vicinity of or travelling around the area of Oak Park Station at the time of Gus's disappearance. All of those people have been contacted and have been discounted. In addition to that, we've assessed, reviewed and investigated 380 Crime Stopper actions, 38 emails directly received from members of the public, 2 letters that we've received with information from members of the public, and a large number of internal South Australia Police intelligence documents. Through all of this effort, we have found no evidence to suggest that Gus was abducted from the property.
And this is the sort of things that the RCMP would have been doing with Lily and Jack as well. It's not them just saying, well, okay, nobody saw anything, so it's not an abduction. They would have done exactly the same thing. They would have checked out people in a relative vicinity of the property, maybe 20, 30 kilometres within the property, people who are registered or recognised offenders. They would have canvassed all the other properties in the area. We know that they went around and got all the trail cam footage from the area. We know they went to Glengarry Station, which, as the crow flies, is, I can't remember, but it was, you know, a bit of a distance. So all these things that he is saying in terms of what they did to rule out the possibility of an abduction, these are standard procedures that you're going to see in any case with missing children, whether it's in Australia, America, Canada, New Zealand, the UK. This is just how they do it. So that just shows that it's not just a case of saying, oh, well, you know, we don't think it's an abduction. There's a lot of investigation goes into ruling out the possibility of an abduction.
I just want to quickly go through to firm that up for you, what opportunity for abduction might look like. Oak Park Station is remote. It is 45 kilometres inland from the nearest main roadway, which is the Barrier Highway. Oak Park Station doesn't have a signpost or anything like that off a road that points you to Oak Park Station. There's nothing obvious that would lead you to Oak Park Station unless you know where you're going and the way there. It can only be accessed by one of 2 45-kilometre dirt roads that come in from different directions. The red line on the bottom right there will show you, it looks like one road, but it's actually 2. You'll see Oak Park Station kind of in the middle there. The one line that comes in from the left of that picture and the other from the top right are the 2 roads that come into Oak Park Station. They can only be accessed by 4-wheel drive. If you're driving on those roads, you're going to one of the stations or you're lost. It's not a place that you just go to. There are several gates on each of the driveways which impede access to Oak Park Station, and a number of these gates are regularly locked and secured by the station owners and the property owners in the area. Both the driveways bypass other neighbouring properties. You have to drive past other stations to get to Oak Park. The roads are not a thoroughfare. And as I've said, if you're driving on those roads, you're there for a reason. There were no vehicles foreign to the area at Oak Park Station that have been identified by either the property owners themselves or the neighbouring properties at the time that Gus went missing. We know that if there is a vehicle that is sighted anywhere in the vicinity of Oak Park Station, I'm saying anywhere kilometres away from Oak Park Station, there is normally dust in the air that will tell you that a vehicle is either arriving or leaving that area. No dust, no sighting of any vehicles at the time that Gus went missing. There's been no foreign tracks located arriving or leaving the property. The timing of being in the area when Gus was playing outside would need to be impeccable. If Gus has been abducted, it is absolutely fortuitous. There is no pattern of Gus playing outside at Oak Park Station. So for some...
And that is so much the same in terms of Lily and Jack. It's not a pattern because they should have been at school. Not only that, yes, it's not as isolated as this station out at Gairloch Road, but it's still quite some distance from the actual, main centre, the town. It is out the back of Whoop Whoop still. Yeah, there's other houses around, so it's not as isolated as Oak Park Station, but it's also not a highly populated area. It's not like they have a neighbour where they can see their neighbour's house. I mean, Brad is less than half a kilometre away, but he's on a parallel road. Then the nearest house would be on the corner of Lansdowne. So it is isolated. Not as isolated as in this case, but Gairloch Road is definitely isolated, which, of course, minimises the possibility of abduction. But what he's saying in terms of the timing of it applies with Lily and Jack. Someone would have had to have known they were on the property playing out the back of the house. No one would know that because you would expect 2 young children to be at school. And according to Janie, she would have heard the vehicle.
To start to get a dossier together on movements and time of the day, etc., we are very confident is very, very unlikely. So the opportunity for anybody to abduct Gus is extremely low, with what I've just explained about the remoteness of the property and with the work that Task Force Horizon investigators have done around people in the area at the time. So it leaves us with the other part of the investigation, and that is investigating whether people known to Gus were involved in his disappearance. So from the time that Gus went missing, the family members have been cooperating with police and providing information that has assisted with establishing the movements of Gus around the time that he went missing. A detailed review of all of that information has been conducted by Task Force Horizon members. As a result of that, we've identified a number of inconsistencies and discrepancies with that information as it relates to timelines and the versions of events provided to us by the family members.
Ding, ding, ding. Does that sound familiar? It is always the way with these cases because people are basically concocting a story. They're not going to remember the details correctly because they haven't actually experienced it with all their senses. It's just something that they have come up with. So again, it is a red flag for investigators the moment all my battery's going. I'm just going to press play while I change my audio battery.
As a result of these inconsistencies and investigations into them, a person who resides at Oak Park Station has withdrawn their support for the police and is no longer cooperating with us. On the 14th and 15th of January this year, Task Force Horizon investigators attended at Oak Park Station and executed a search warrant. A further comprehensive forensic search was conducted of the Oak Park Station homestead, and a number of items were seized, including a vehicle, a motorcycle, and some electronic devices. All of these items are now subject to forensic testing. The person who has withdrawn their cooperation is now considered a suspect in the disappearance of Gus. I do want to stress, however, that Gus's parents are not suspects in his disappearance. You'd appreciate at this time I cannot make any further comment about the suspect, given that this is now a criminal investigation and a declared major crime.
Oops, sorry, I just completely lost that in terms of, I don't know what I'm doing with that now. That brings us to the end of the press conference. There were questions that were asked as well, but the main thing that I wanted to look at today was the investigation and the similarities with Lily and Jack and how much it tells us in terms of the investigation with Lily and Jack. I think from watching this, we can be even more confident that they did not wander off into the woods. Had they just wandered off into the woods, they would have been found. In terms of abduction, his explanation of how the investigation works, his discussion of looking at opportunity and timing when it comes to deciding if there's been an abduction or something, that is significant also. It still applies, even though it is probably more extreme when it comes to Gus, it still applies in terms of opportunity and timing. The chances of that with Lily and Jack are very, very, very slim. And of course, this dumb story from Dingbat just does not make sense. But I think I learnt quite a bit, even though I've done a lot of research before looking into search and rescue, especially technologies with helicopters and stuff like that. If you followed the Kylie Rodney case, you would understand why so many of us who followed Kylie's case have very good knowledge of the sort of equipment that is used in search and rescue, but that's not for this video. But when you look at the equipment and the technology that was used, this puts what Rob McCammon said into a whole new light. It just clarifies it even more in terms of him saying how thorough the search has been and how confident he is. He's confident because of the technologies that have been used in the search. He's confident because of the technologies that have been used after the search. So the software that they've run all these videos through, he said they had 8,000 videos and said they had to review them. Yes, they would have reviewed them, but they also would have run them through that sort of software to see if there was anything that could be identified. In terms of the software, there's other things they can do with the software other than just saying, hey, look, here's 10,000 sheep. They can also, there is software where they can program in, we want to know the location of everything that is pink, and it will map that for them, for example. But you can see from the augmented reality that basically the footage, yes, there's tree cover, which makes it more challenging, but anywhere where they can see the ground, they can use augmented reality to see what is there. So, I mean, we know now where this investigation is headed, but certainly for me, this just really, it locks it in just a little bit more. It just clarifies things a little bit more and shows us why Rob McCammon is so confident when he talks about them not being in the woods, why he's so confident when he talks about it not being abduction. You know, they don't just twiddle their thumbs and go, yeah, well, no one's called in and said there isn't a tip, you know, that they've seen these children somewhere, so it's not an abduction. They actually profile the children and look where they fit in a risk continuum. And these children would have been really low on that risk continuum, just like Gus. because of the timing, because of the location, all these things like that. Anyway, I'm going to finish it there now that my ADHD meds have finally clicked in and my brain is actually starting to work properly. Ironic. But I think that I thought this was really valuable to do. So I hope this has clarified things for people. I hope it's given people even more of an understanding of what Rob McCammon is talking about when he's talking about the technologies and stuff to do with search. Because I have to say, something with Australian police, they're so upfront with things. They don't beat around the bush. They just tell it how it is. And in this case, it's been so valuable for us in terms of understanding Jack and Lily's case. So I think it's certainly, this has been a worthwhile thing to look at. So I'm going to finish there. I've got another video to work on for Lily and Jack that I want to get out tonight for me, but if you're in Canada, that'll be tomorrow. So thank you so much for coming in and listening. If you haven't already done so, please hit the like button. I want to get this out there in the algorithm, get people to see it. And of course, if you feel the need to share it on social media, that would be great. Likewise with my previous video, feel free to share it anywhere. Yeah, Lane, I am going to do Gus. It won't be as extensive as Jack and Lily because my main commitment is Jack and Lily, as you can probably gather. But my goal, now that I've got my MacBook, is that I will do probably 3 live streams a week at this point in time. And those live streams will be to look at other cases a lot of the time. So I will talk about Gus during those live streams. I will give updates on cases like Phoebe Bishop, Leo Escalante. It just allows me a bit more time and freedom to cover some of the other cases that I've been neglecting while I've been covering Lily and Jack's case. But I will always be putting Lily and Jack front and centre because I think, like so many of you, I've just become so deeply emotionally connected with this case. And I'm here till we see justice in terms of Lily and Jack. So definitely, I will cover Gus, but Lily and Jack will always come first for me while we are still fighting for justice. Okay, well, I'm going to finish it there. I'm going to go grab some lunch and go and work on my video for Lily and Jack, which will be out tonight or for Canadians tomorrow morning. Thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate it. And I will catch you again really soon.